Good evening, and welcome to another installment of Stories from the Internet, where I bring you the creepiest real-life stories from all over. For a continual supply of creepiness, hit that subscribe button and the bell icon so you never miss a future episode. Sit back, hit the lights, and let's begin. Tonight we return to a favourite topic of mine, glitches in the Matrix, where people share the stories of parallel universes, time slips, and other weirdness that we can all relate to in one way or another. So this is sort of an odd thing to explain, also a very long thing. You can choose to believe me, and I'm being earnest and honest in these things are true, to the greatest degree I can recall. My memories are foggy and they seem incredibly jumbled in my head, and I can't figure out proper timelines of my own life. I can't fully explain it either. But let me begin with, I think I came from a reality in which I died. Multiple realities in which I died. My father was an abusive man. Not always, but probably 80% of the time when he drank. And at some time while I was in the womb, my father decided he didn't want any more kids and proceeded to beat my mum and hit her belly. He was literally trying to kill me. And I've heard other stories about women who ended up having miscarriages because of similar situations. I believe that was the first time I died. I believe I come from a reality in which I did. And I know this sounds odd, but somehow was born in this one and displacing the version of myself that was supposed to exist. My mum had two names she had wanted to pick for me, Jeremiah or Joshua. She says that for some reason, she had the overwhelming urge to give me a biblical name, and when she saw me, she knew instantly that I should be called Joshua. Flash forward to when I was about 7 or 8. We lived in an apartment by a busy street. My sister's room had a window facing the street and I was playing 007. The glare from the window is ruining my game, so I jump onto my sister's bed, which sits under the window. I hear a sound like a rock hit it, and I don't think anything of it, but I have this extremely odd feeling. Part of it was that something didn't seem right. Things seemed off, and to be quite honest, I have this odd memory that I wasn't quite seeing things right. It's difficult to explain. But it was like time was frozen, but my eyes didn't quite work, and there was just a haze of colours. I also had this other odd sensation along with that, sort of like that lightheaded feeling you get when you stand up too quick. Only a second or so passed after the sound, and I closed the blinds and jumped down to the floor. Before I get a chance to hit start again and resume playing, I hear my mum freaking out in the other room. The front door's open, and her and this guy, she later dates, are sitting outside and smoking cigarettes. She yells at me, "What happened? What was that noise?" I yell back that I think a rock hit the window. Then again, I'm interrupted before I go back to playing. My mum is screaming in terror and the guy's yelling something I can't make out. I come out of the room and ask what's going on. They tell me a man just ran through the complex covered in blood, holding a pistol. There was a really young neighbour boy who had been playing in the dirt outside his apartment, and he was sobbing uncontrollably, and his mum came out to hold him. Not too long after that, the police show up, and they began questioning all of us, and we come to find that there had been a drive-by shooting. We tell them that I had heard something hit the window, and the cop asks us if he could come investigate. As he's looking at the window, he says it was a bullet and that it got shot into the house. Mum tells him I had just been standing there to close the blinds, and the cop looks at me and then the window. He sizes me up and examines my head. He says, "You're lucky, kid. An inch taller and that bullet would have hit your head." And then he proceeds to look around the room, spots an odd indent on the wall, and looks to my sister's drawing desk. There, laying on one of her sketchbooks, was a deformed bullet. He bags it carefully with tweezers and tells us he will be back in a bit to get more details. An odd thing that I notice is the TV is now off, and the game in the N64 is that bright yellow of Donkey Kong. I asked my mum if she turned the TV off. She says no. I asked then if she changed my game. Again, no. I think this was the second time I died. I have this odd sensation that in another version of reality, I did in fact die, and my soul carried over to this current reality, displacing yet another version of myself. Now, to add to all of this, I have done a lot of research on the Mandela effect and all that crazy shit. And I remember clearly a lot of things being different. I can't exactly recall them all now, but definitely a lot of things that others have stated about that. The oddest thing is that a few years after that, 9/11 happened. That day, I had woke up way earlier than usual and felt off. I turned the TV on. Mind you, this is about 5 a.m. Arizona time, and on nearly every channel, it seemed to be the footage of the first plane hitting the towers. Something felt incredibly off, not just because of all the normal reactions that people had. I recall my mum saying that I was going to stay home that day because she was worried, despite being in Arizona. But oddly, my mum recalls taking me to school and picking me up early because they cut school early that day because a lot of parents were pulling their kids out. Here's the oddest thing. I remember staying home watching coverage of the trade towers, but I have another memory of going to school and watching it on our TVs hanging from the roofs and the kids' reactions. I also recall a memory in which my mum says she was picking me up early because she wanted me to be safe, and also to go get me a cell phone so I could call her in emergencies because she was concerned. Also, while retaining a memory of her saying that exact thing while we were sitting at home watching the coverage. Dual memories? I have this belief that the day 9/11 happened was some anomaly, and that was the biggest shift in time or dimension, and when that event happened, it displaced untold millions from various timelines/dimensions into others. Just a theory, of course, and one that I could not prove if I wanted to. With the talk of displacement from other timelines, this story reminds me of the movie The One with Jet Li. If you haven't seen it, check it out. It's a great movie. I posted about this over 2 years ago in a different sub, and I thought I'd see what you guys think. I've simply copied my comment below. About 8 months ago, I was driving up a short hill in the overtaking lane. I was attempting to overtake a particularly slow car. I was going far too fast. I absolutely knew this, but was somehow fine with it. Then I had a burst of adrenaline and decided to accelerate even harder to overtake the car, before the overtaking lane merged back into one lane. Sometimes I don't think I was successful. I think after I crested the hill, I was too abreast in the now single lane. A truck was in the opposite lane starting to come up to the hill, and I think I hit it at the right-hand side, the truck driver's left side, straight on, at considerable speed. I remember looking at the truck and thinking, I'm going to hit it, but feeling that that's okay. Everything is going to be fine. I think I saw the front of the truck hit and crumple the left side of my car. Saw it come right up to my face. Then, for a second, nothing but black. A moment later, I was parked by a small factory-type building about half a mile down the road. I remember my skin feeling prickly and tingly, and I felt the adrenaline whoosh out of my body. I cut my journey short and just went home. Now, on occasion, things just feel left of centre. The world feels a little more grey and cold, and I mean that literally and figuratively. My family and friends seem absolutely the same, and I'm very happy in my life. But some things in the world just seem off. This seems absolutely ridiculous to say, but sometimes I'll be in a place and I'll get an odd, uncomfortable feeling, and then the place seems to flash to warmth and sunlight and happiness. Then it goes back to this slightly off, greyer place. I see the same physical place, but for a while it seems much more beautiful. I'll read an article or listen to the radio and think that's not how it's supposed to be. So I'll Google it, and sure enough, I was wrong. It's not all the time, and it doesn't worry me. As I said, my personal life is the same and I'm happy. It's the world outside that sometimes feels so off and so wrong. I think we can all relate to this story a little bit. It does sometimes seem like the world is just not quite right. I think it's just the human condition though. So last night I was finishing something at work, and while I was finishing it, I was talking to two co-workers. We work at a senior facility, and we were on the second floor outside the dining room that hasn't been used in a few months because, unlike before, all residents have been eating downstairs now. So while we were busy talking, I just suddenly hear a conversation. It was coming from the dining room, but it also sounded weird. It was loud and kinda echoing, as if people were talking in an empty room, so the sound kinda bounces. What's weird about it is that it was just there, and then it was gone. I don't even know how to explain it. We were talking, and all of a sudden we just hear people talking. We just hear this conversation from two or more people, and after a few seconds, it was gone. The voice that stood out the most was a man's voice, but I didn't really understand what they were saying. When I heard it, I turned my head to the dining room, but then I brushed it off because one of my co-workers gets afraid easily, and I didn't want to scare them, especially because they've heard and seen a lot of things that really freak them out. Night shift can be kinda creepy sometimes. So I looked back at one of my co-workers who was talking, and she asked me, "Did you hear that?" I was surprised and told her, "Yeah," but we looked at each other in a way that we're telling one another not to talk about it because we didn't want our other co-worker to get freaked out. So today, when I saw her, I asked her what she heard. She told me she heard a conversation and it sounded weird, as if it was coming from a radio or TV. It was loud. She also heard a man's voice and other people talking, but it was a man's voice that stood out. I told her I heard the same thing and that I thought maybe it was a glitch in the Matrix. I'm also very fond of paranormal stuff, and I get freaked out too, but for some reason, what happened last night didn't freak me out. Whatever we heard was very clear. We just couldn't understand what they were saying and what language it was. But I really feel like it was a glitch. It felt like someone turned on a radio and that particular channel went on for a few seconds and turned off. As if some glitch happened and we were able to hear someone else's conversation in who knows what part of the world. I really don't know how to explain it further, but it sure was weird and cool at the same time. To me, this sounds like it could be a parallel universe slippage. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Thank you all for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to leave a like if you enjoyed this video. You can follow me on most social media and chat with me over at the Opinionated Outcast Discord server. If you really like what I do, consider supporting me on Patreon for as little as $2 a month, where there are rewards, sneak peeks, and other Patreon-only exclusives. All links are in the description below. Thank you, and remember, it's always scarier when it's real. Good night.